The Chaldean Catholic Church is an Eastern Syriac particular church of the Catholic Church, under the Holy See of the Catholicos-Patriarch of Babylon, maintaining full communion with the Bishop of Rome and the rest of the Catholic Church. The Chaldean Catholic Church presently comprises around 500,000 people. Most Chaldo-Assyrians live in northern Iraq, with smaller numbers in adjacent areas in northeastern Syria, southeastern Turkey and northwestern Iran, a region roughly corresponding with what was Assyria between the 25th century BC and mid-7th century AD. There are also Chaldeans in the diaspora, primarily in the American states of Michigan, Illinois and California. Despite being known as Chaldeans, the followers are generally accepted to be one and the same as the indigenous Eastern Aramaic-speaking Assyrians, although a minority of Chaldeans have in recent times begun to espouse an identity from the land of Chaldea, extant in southeast Mesopotamia between the 9th and 6th centuries BC. Despite there being no accredited academic study or historical record which supports this. In addition to this church, other ethnically Assyrian churches include the Assyrian Church of the East, the Ancient Church of the East, the Syriac Orthodox Church, the Syriac Catholic Church, the Assyrian Pentecostal Church and the Assyrian Evangelical Church. History. Before its founding, the history of the Chaldean Church begins with the Assyrian Church of the East, founded between the 1st and 3rd centuries AD in Assyria, and also with the ethno-religious group known as Assyrians who adhere to the Chaldean Catholic Church, and at least 11 other Assyrian, Chaldean, or Syriac denominations. In the 5th century BC, the region of Assyria was the birthplace of the Syriac language and Syriac script, and both of which remain important within all strands of Syriac Christianity as a liturgical language. Similar to how Latin icon Greek may be used in Catholicism or Greek Orthodoxy, the Church of the East was an apostolic church established by Thomas the Apostle, Thaddeus of Edessa, and Bartholomew the Apostle. St. Peter, chief of the apostles, added his blessing to the Church of the East at the time of his visit to the See at Babylon in the earliest days of the Church, when stating, "The elect Church which is in Babylon salutes you, and Mark, my son." Although founded in the 1st century, the Church first achieved official state recognition from Sasanian Iran in the 4th century with the accession of Yazdegerd I to the throne of the Sasanian Empire. In 410 the Synod of Seleucia Ctesiphon, held at the Sasanian capital, allowed the Church's leading bishops to elect a formal Catholicos. Catholicos Isaac was required both to lead the Assyrian Christian community, and to answer on its behalf to the Sasanian emperor. Under pressure from the Sasanian emperor, the Church of the East sought to increasingly distance itself from the Greek Orthodox Church. Therefore, in 424, the bishops of the Sasanian Empire met in council under the leadership of Catholicos-Patriarch and determined that they would not, henceforth, refer disciplinary or theological problems to any external power, and especially not to any bishop or church council in the Roman Empire. Thus, the Mesopotamian churches did not send representatives to the various church councils attended by representatives of the Western Church. Accordingly, the leaders of the Church of the East did not feel bound by any decisions of what came to be regarded as Roman imperial councils. Despite this, the creed and canons of the First Council of Nicaea of 325, affirming the full divinity of Christ, were formally accepted at the Synod of Seleucia Ctesiphon. The Church's understanding of the term hypostasis differs from the definition of the term offered at the Council of Chalcedon of 451. For this reason, the Assyrian Church has never approved the Chalcedonian definition. The theological controversy that followed the Council of Ephesus in 431 proved a turning point in the Church's history. The Council condemned as heretical the Christology of Nestorius, whose reluctance to accord the Virgin Mary the title Theotokos, God-bearer, Mother of God, was taken as evidence that he believed two separate persons to be present within Christ. The Sasanian emperor, hostile to the Byzantines, saw the opportunity to ensure the loyalty of his Christian subjects and lent support to the Nestorian schism. The emperor took steps to cement the primacy of the Nestorian party within the Church of the East, granting its members his protection, and executed the pro-Roman Catholicos-Babylon in 484 and replaced him with the Nestorian bishop of Nisibis Barsauma. The Catholicos-Patriarch of Babylon later confirmed the Church's support for Nestorianism. After this split with the Western world and adoption of Nestorianism, the Assyrian Church of the East expanded rapidly due to missionary works during the medieval period. During the period between 500 and 400, the geographical horizons of the Church of the East extended well beyond its heartland in present-day northern Iraq, northeastern Syria and southeastern Turkey. The Church went through a golden age and held significant power and worldwide influence during this period. Assyrian communities sprang up throughout Central Asia, and missionaries from Assyria and Mesopotamia took the Christian faith as far as China, with the primary indicator of the missionary work being the Nestorian stele, a Tang dynasty tablet written in Chinese script found in China dating to 781 AD that documented 150 years of Christian history in China. Their most important conversion, however, was of the St. Thomas Christians of the Malabar coast in India, as they are now the largest group of non-ethnically Assyrian Christians on earth, with around 10 million followers when all denominations are added together and their own diaspora is included. The St. Thomas Christians were believed by tradition to have been converted by St. Thomas, and were in communion with the Church of the East until the end of the medieval period. Turning point of the Eastern Church. Around 1400 AD, the Turco-Mongol nomadic conqueror Timur arose out of the Eurasian steppe to lead military campaigns across western, southern and central Asia, ultimately seizing much of the Muslim world after defeating the Mamluks of Egypt and Syria, the emerging Ottoman Empire, and the declining Delhi Sultanate. Timur's conquests devastated most Assyrian bishoprics and destroyed the 4,000-year-old city of Ashur, which was the cultural and religious capital of the Assyrian Church of the East and its followers. After the destruction brought on by Timur, the massive and organized Nestorian church structure, which at its peak extended as far as China, Central Asia, Mongolia and India, was largely reduced to the small region of Assyria. Its place of origin and went from a world religion to one practiced almost exclusively in the Assyrian Triangle by its founding ethnic group, the Eastern Aramaic-speaking Assyrian people, and stayed as such until the Assyrian genocide, when a large portion of the Assyrian homeland in the Hakkari Mountains was ethnically and culturally cleansed of its endemic Assyrian population entirely, and in effect also ended the Shimun branch, which had to re-establish itself in America up until 2015 when they established the new see in Erbil. Along with the destruction of the Hakkari cultural region, the Assyrians of Tur Abdon, Amid, Urfa and other regions of the southeast suffered genocide as well, but due to an agreement with the Turks, the Syriac Orthodox Church was able to exist in the region after the end of the genocide, and a Syriac community still exists in Turkey till this day, and is the most geographically spread out church still functioning in Turkey, with active churches in Adıyaman, Siirt, Istanbul, capital, and its primary area of operation and seat at Mor Gabriel Monastery in Ter Abdon. This blow by Timur to the structure of the Assyrian Church of the East may have been one of the reasons for its decline, and subsequent rise of the Chaldean Catholic Church in 1552. 1552, founding by Yohanan Sulaka. Descent over the hereditary succession grew until 1552, when a group of Assyrian bishops from the northern regions of Amid and Salmus elected a priest, Mar Yohanan Sulaka, as a rival patriarch, to look for a bishop of metropolitan rank to consecrate him patriarch. Sulaka traveled to the Pope in Rome and entered into communion with the Catholic Church, after first being refused by the Syriac Orthodox Church. In 1553, he was consecrated bishop and elevated to the rank of patriarch, taking the name of Mar-Shimun VIII. He was granted the title of Patriarch of the East Assyrians, and his church was named the Church of Athura and Mosul. Mar-Shimun VIII Yohanan Sulaka returned to northern Mesopotamia in the same year and fixed his seat in Amid, before being put to death by the partisans of the Assyrian Church of the East Patriarch of Alkosh. He ordained 5 metropolitan bishops, thus beginning a new ecclesiastical hierarchy, the patriarchal line known as the Shimun line. The area of influence of this patriarchate soon moved from Amid east, fixing the see after many places, in the isolated Assyrian village of Okanus. The connections with Rome loosened up under Sulaka's successors. The last patriarch to be formally recognized by the Pope died in 1600. The hereditary status of the office was reintroduced, and, in 1692, the communion with Rome was formally broken, with this part of the Church once more rejoining the Assyrian Church of the East. 1672, the Josephite line of Amid, after the Shimun line, cut off ties with Rome and re-established itself in Od Chalnis. A second so-called Chaldean Patriarchate began a few decades later in 1672, when Mar Joseph I, Archbishop of Amid, entered in communion with Rome, separating from the Assyrian Church Patriarchal See of Alkosh. In 1681, the Holy See granted him the title of Patriarch of the Chaldeans, deprived of its patriarch. All Joseph I's successors took the name of Joseph. However, the life of this patriarchate was difficult. At the beginning there were problems due to the vexations from the traditionalists, under which they were subject from a legal point of view, and later it struggled with financial difficulties due to the jizya imposed by the Ottoman authorities upon Christian subjects. Nevertheless, its influence expanded from its original strongholds in Amid and Mardam towards the area of Mosul and the Nineveh plains. The Josephite line merged in 1830 with the Nestorian Alkosh Patriarchate. In order to do this, the Alkosh Patriarchate entered into full communion with Rome, and the two Chaldean Patriarchates combined, and the capital was designated as Alkosh. It was from this point that the modern Chaldean Catholic Church came into being. The Alkosh Patriarchate, in communion with Rome, the largest and oldest patriarchal see of the Assyrian Church of the East, was based at the Rabban, or Meetst Monastery of Alkosh. It spread from Accra up to Sirte and Nisibis, covering in the south the rich plain of Mosul. In the short period between 1610 and 1617 it entered in communion with Rome, and in 1771 the Patriarch Eliadenka signed a Catholic confession of faith, but no formal union resulted. When Eliadenka died, his succession was disputed by two cousins, Elia Ishoyab, who was recognized by Rome but renounced his Catholic faith, and Yohanan Hormizd, who, although unrecognized by Rome, considered himself a Catholic. In 1804, after Eliashob's death, Johannan Hormizd was made by default the Patriarch of Alkosh. There were thus two patriarchates in communion with Rome now, a larger one in Alkosh, and the original one in Amid that was ruled by Augustin Hindi. However, Rome did not want to choose between the two candidates, and granted neither the title of Patriarch, even though from 1811 it was Augustin Hindi who ruled the Church de facto. After Hindi's death, on July 5, 1830, Johannan Hormizd of the Alkosh line was by default formally confirmed Patriarch of the Chaldean Catholic Church by Pope Pius VIII with the title of Patriarch of Babylon of the Chaldeans. Quote, "In this act, the merging of the patriarchates of Alkosh and Amid was completed, forming a single Chaldean Catholic Church. On the other hand, the Shimun line of patriarchs based in Orchanis remained in the traditional Assyrian Church, independent of the new Chaldean Church. When the large Alkosh branch took a Catholic profession of faith, the Shimun line remained the sole remaining Nestorian patriarchate left. The Patriarchate of the present-day Assyrian Church of the East with its see in Erbil forms the continuation of the line." 19th century expansion and disaster. The following years of the Chaldean Church were marked by externally originating violence. In 1838, the monastery of Rabban Hormizd and the town of Alkosh was attacked by the Ottomans and the Kurds of Sauran, and hundreds of Christian Assyrians died. In 1843, the Kurds started to extort as much money as they could from Assyrian villages, killing those who refused. More than 10,000 Assyrian Christians of all denominations were killed and the icons of the Rabban Hormizd monastery defaced. In 1846, the Chaldean Church was recognized by the Ottoman Empire as a millet, a distinctive religious community in the empire, thus obtaining its civic emancipation. The most famous patriarch of the Chaldean Church in the 19th century was Joseph VI Ordo, who was remembered also for his clashes with Pope Pius IX, mainly about his attempts to extend the Chaldean jurisdiction over the Indian Syro-Malabar Catholic Church. This was a period of expansion for the Chaldean Catholic Church. In the early 20th century, Russian Orthodox missionaries established two dioceses in North Assyria. Many Assyrian leaders believed that the Russian Empire would be more interested in protecting them than the British Empire and the French Empire, hoping for the support of the Russians. World War I and the subsequent Assyrian genocide was seen as the right time to rebel against the Ottoman Empire. An Assyrian War of Independence was launched, led by Aga Petros and Malik Koiba. On the 4th of November 1914, the Turkish Enver Pasha announced the Jihad, the Holy War, against the Christians. Assyrian forces fought successfully against overwhelming odds in northern Iraq, southeast Turkey and northwest Iran for a time. However, the Russian Revolution in 1917 and the collapse of Armenian resistance left the Assyrians cut off from supplies of food and ammunition. Vastly outnumbered and surrounded, Assyrian territories were overrun by the Ottoman Empire and the Kurdish and Arab allies, and the people forced to flee. Most who escaped the massacres and continuation of the Assyrian genocide died from cold in the winter or hunger. The disaster struck mainly the regions of the Assyrian Church of the East, and the Chaldean dioceses in north of Syria were ruined. A further massacre occurred in 1933 at the hands of the Iraqi army, in the form of the Samel massacre, which resulted in thousands of deaths. A minority of Assyrians have converted to Protestantism during the 20th century, leaving the Assyrian Church of the East, Chaldean Catholic Church and Syriac Orthodox Church in favor of the Assyrian Pentecostal Church and Assyrian Evangelical Church. 21st century. Epoch is around around the world. A recent development in the Chaldean Catholic Church has been the creation in 2006 of the Eparchy of Oceania, with the title of St. Thomas the Apostle of Sydney of the Chaldeans. This jurisdiction includes the Chaldean Catholic communities of Australia and New Zealand, and the first bishop, named by Pope Benedict XVI on the 21st of October 2006, is Archbishop D.J. Ibrahim Kasib, until this date Archbishop of Basura in Iraq. There has been a large immigration to the United States, particularly to southeast Michigan. Although the largest population resides in southeast Michigan, there are populations in parts of California and Arizona as well. Canada in recent years has shown growing communities in both eastern provinces, such as Ontario, and in western Canada, such as Saskatchewan. In 2008, Mabawa Isaro of the Assyrian Church of the East and 1,000 Assyrian families were received into full communion with the Chaldean Catholic Church. For the Assyrian Church of the East, on Friday, June 10, 2011, Pope Benedict XVI erected a new Chaldean Catholic eparchy in Toronto, Canada, and named Archbishop Mar Yohanan Zora, who has worked alongside four priests with Catholics in Toronto for nearly 20 years and who was previously an ad personam archbishop and the Archbishop of the Archdiocese of Ahwaz, Iran. The new eparchy, or diocese, will be known as the Chaldean Catholic Eparchy of Maradai. There are 38,000 Chaldean Catholics in Canada. Archbishop Zora was born in Batna, Iraq, on March 15, 1939. He was ordained in 1962 and worked in Iraqi parishes before being transferred to Iran in 1969. The 2006 Australian census counted a total of 4,498 Chaldean Catholics in that country. Persecution in Iraq and Syria. Assyrians of all denominations and other religious minorities in Iraq have endured extensive persecution since 2003, including the abductions and murders of the religious leaders, threats of violence or death if they do not abandon their homes and businesses, and the bombing and destruction of the churches and other places of worship. All this has occurred as anti-Christian emotions rise within Iraq after the American invasion and the fall of Saddam Hussein in 2003 and the rise of militant jihadists and religious militias. Father Agid Aziz Ghani, the pastor of the Chaldean Church of the Holy Spirit in Mosul, who graduated from the Pontifical University of St. Thomas Aquinas, Angelicum in Rome in 2003 with a licentiate in ecumenical theology, was killed on 3 June 2007 in Mosul alongside the subdeacons Basmin Yusuf Daud, Wafd Hana Isho, and Ghassan Isam Bidord, after he celebrated Mass. Chaldean Archbishop Paulos Faraj Ra and 3 companions were abducted on 29 February 2008 in Mosul and murdered a few days later. In recent years, particularly since 2014, the Assyrians in northern Iraq and northeast Syria have become the target of unprovoked Islamic terrorism. As a result, Assyrians have taken up arms, alongside other groups in response to unprovoked attacks by Al-Qaeda, ISIL, Nusra Front, and other Wahhabi terrorist Islamic fundamentalist groups. In 2014, Islamic terrorists of ISIS attacked Assyrian towns and villages in the Assyrian homelands of northern Iraq and northeast Syria, together with cities such as Mosul, Kirkuk and Hasakeh, which have large Assyrian populations. There have been reports of a litany of religiously motivated atrocities committed by ISIS terrorists including beheadings, crucifixions, child murders, rape of women and girls, torture, forced conversions, ethnic cleansing, robbery, kidnappings, theft, theft of homes, and extortion in the form of illegal taxes levied upon non-Muslims. Assyrians forced from the homes in cities such as Mosul have had the houses and possessions stolen, and given over to ISIS terrorists, local Sunni Arabs. In addition, the Assyrians have suffered seeing their ancient indigenous heritage desecrated, in the form of Bronze Age and Iron Age monuments and archaeological sites, as well as numerous Assyrian churches and monasteries, being systematically vandalized and destroyed by ISIS. These include the ruins of Nineveh, Kalu, Nimrud, Ashur, Sharuk and Antatra. Assyrians of all denominations in both northern Iraq and northeast Syria have responded by forming armed Assyrian militias to defend their territories, and despite being heavily outnumbered and outgunned, have had success in driving ISIS from Assyrian towns and villages, and defending others from attack. Armed Assyrian militias have also joined forces with other peoples persecuted by ISIS and Sunni Muslim extremists, including the Kurds, Turkoman, Yazidis, Syriac Aramean Christians, Shabaks, Armenian Christians, Kawilia, Mandeans, Circassians and Shia Muslim Arabs and Iranians. Ecumenical Relations. The Church's relations with its fellow Assyrians in the Assyrian Church of the East have improved in recent years. In 1994, Pope John Paul II and Patriarch Dinka IV of the Assyrian Church of the East signed a common Christological declaration. On 20 July 2001, the Holy See issued a document, in agreement with the Assyrian Church of the East, named Guidelines for Admission to the Eucharist between the Chaldean Church and the Assyrian Church of the East, which confirmed also the validity of the anaphora of Vada and Mari. Structure. The Chaldean Catholic Church has the following dioceses: Patriarchate of Babylon, Metropolitan Archdioceses of Baghdad, Kirkuk, Tehran, Urmia, Archdioceses of Ahwaz, Basra, Diyarbakir, Erbil, Mosul, Eparchies of Aleppo, Al-Quq, Ahmadiyya, Accra, Beirut, Cairo, St. Peter the Apostle of San Diego, St. Thomas the Apostle of Detroit, Chaldean Catholic Eparchy of Maradai of Toronto, St. Thomas the Apostle of Sydney, Salmus, Sulaymaniyya, Zaku. Territories dependent on the Patriarch, Jerusalem, Jordan. Hierarchy. The current Patriarch is Louis Sarko, elected in January 2013. In October 2007, his predecessor, Emmanuel III Deli, became the first Chaldean Catholic Patriarch to be elevated to the rank of cardinal within the Catholic Church. The present Chaldean episcopate is as follows: Mar Louis Raphael I Sarko, Patriarch of Babylon; Mar Emmanuel III Deli, Patriarch Emeritus of Babylon; Emil Shamoun Nona, Archbishop of Mosul; Bashar Wada, Archbishop of Erbil; Ramzi Gamu, Archbishop of Tehran; Thomas Merriam, Archbishop of Urmia and Salmus; Yohanan Zora, Archbishop of Toronto; Jabrail Kasib, Archbishop of Sydney; Marj Akishak, titular Archbishop of Nisibis and Curial Bishop of Babylon; Habib al-Nawfali, Archbishop of Basra; Yusuf Merkis, Archbishop of Kirkuk and Sulaymaniyya; Mar Mikapola Makdasi, Bishop of Alkosh; Mar Shleman Warduni, Curial Bishop of Babylon; Mar Zad Sarop, Auxiliary Bishop of Babylon; Mar Anthony Ordo, Bishop of Aleppo; Mar Michael Kasserji, Bishop of Lebanon; Mar Rabban al-Qais, Bishop of Ahmadiyya and Sako; Mar Ibrahim, Bishop of St. Thomas the Apostle of Detroit; Mar Francis Calabat, Bishop of St. Thomas the Apostle of Detroit; Mar Sahad Joseph Jamo, Bishop of St. Peter the Apostle of San Diego; Mar Bawa Isaro, titular Bishop of Forashana and Auxiliary Bishop of St. Peter the Apostle of San Diego. Several sees are vacant: Archeparchy of Diyarbakir, Archeparchy of Ahwaz, Eparchy of Aqra, Eparchy of Cairo,